Good morning. I wanted to thank you for being here with us today. If someone's watching at some other time, I also thank you for having this interest in my mother's life, in Irma Archer's life. I'm going to take the coward's way out and record this ahead of time because I know myself. And I know that I get emotional, and when I get emotional, I cannot speak. I admire those people who can get emotional and keep going. I'm not one of them. But I did want to take the opportunity to talk some about my mom. She was a very special lady. I know I'm biased, but I've had so many people tell me the same that I don't mind saying it. I know that she had a lot of unique qualities, a lot of special qualities, a lot of things that made her very special to a lot of people. Got stuck on the word special there. I want to talk some about some of the passions in her life, some of the things that really drove her, because when she dedicated herself to something, she really dedicated herself to that thing. She did very few things halfway. I remember that as she started getting a little older and dealing with some different health issues, I remember one of the first times she said, "I need to sit down for a minute." And I thought, my mom doesn't sit down. She wasn't one to stop going. She was always working on something. And one of the first passions of her life was music. She loved music, loved making music. Apparently, grew up around music. Her only brother, Glenn, was also a music professor. And the two of them dedicated themselves to music. And Mother went to Abilene Christian and sang in the a cappella chorus, which was one of the greatest joys of her life. She made lifelong friends there. It's been a joy to speak with people who were in choir with her in college, and we are playing some of the music from the ACU alumni chorus meetings. That were some of her favorite things to do, to get together with other people and sing. She just loved it. When she was in school, she was an assistant to Dr. Leonard Burford. Those of you that know of Dr. Burford at least may know that he was the choir professor at ACU or ACC at that time for many years, and was a blind man. And so whoever worked with him had special tasks. And one of the things that she did was take roll and keep a list of who was chewing gum and who was misbehaving. And so she took care of all those things for him. She also had to have a mat that when they traveled, she would put the mat down so that he could use that to orient himself. And she told about being on one trip and forgetting the mat and having to go door to door in this neighborhood asking if someone had a mat she could use. But she loved Dr. Burford, loved her choir mates. She was in sextet, and they sang at a lot of special events, and like I say, formed lifelong friendships. So many people tell me about knowing Irma Ruth, as she often went by back then. She earned a bachelor's in music at Abilene Christian, went on to get a master's in music at North Texas, and that was unusual back then. Back in the 50s, not a lot of women were getting master's degrees in music, especially those that just planned to teach, not teach at the university level, but just teach, at a high school level or lower. But she loved music and loved learning about music, and so that was something she did. She taught piano and voice. I have early memories of, being with my sisters and staying very quiet because Mother had a student in the next room. And so growing up around music was just a part of my life. At the time that many kids were learning to read with Dick and Jane, I was learning to read music, and learned at a very young age because of my mom. One year when my dad was working on his doctorate at the University of Texas, he lived down in Austin during that year, and so my mom actually taught at Angelo State during that time, taught music at Angelo State, and I got to be around some of the students and see some of the productions, and very interesting time. Mother was very involved in the Texas Music Educators Association. They would do a convention every year in San Antonio, and she would go down with her friends, and that was a very important thing for her. There were some social aspects to that, but so much of it was about perfecting herself in music, and she developed a passion for elementary school music. She taught mainly at Bowie Elementary in San Angelo for decades. She taught a few years at Travis, and I think 1 year at Bel Air, but mainly at Bowie, and would do Christmas programs and into school programs, and they would do these citywide programs. I think they got to where they were doing it every other year, but they would go to the Coliseum there in San Angelo, and all the sixth graders from the different elementary schools, because sixth grade was elementary back then, all the sixth graders would come together and form this giant chorus, learn choreography, do all these things, and Mother would work year-round preparing for those things, working with her dear friend Eddie Lou Neal, with other teachers. And I remember my father getting irritated. He'd say, they don't pay you to work during the summer. But it wasn't about a job for her. It was a passion. Like I say, it was a vocation, and she loved to teach. Early morning choir practice, there's no extra pay for those things, but it's what music teachers do because they love it. She dedicated herself to implementing the Kadali method. Those of you who know music probably know some about that. It's proved to be very effective with teaching young people. They learn, methods for learning rhythm, methods for learning the do-re-mi, how to sign the do-re-mi, all of those things. And she would go to workshops and study and like I say, dedicate herself to my father's frustration, because when he wanted her to be relaxing and taking care of things at home, she was taking care of the home, but she was also putting a lot of time into her teaching because she cared about that. I remember the weekly square dancing. That was always interesting, learning that additional part of music. I remember the memorable songs. I remember the first song that I remember her writing. One of the teachers at Bowie, Sharon Sanders, wrote a poem to be a school song, and my mom put it to music. And so many people tell me they still know the Bowie Patriots song. The Bowie Patriots are we, faithful and loyal will we be. I won't sing the whole thing, but I can. And so many people that had Mother say they can sing the school song. And I'll show you some Facebook posts from a group of ex-Bowie students. But there are so many memorable songs from those elementary school days. Let me show you. This person posted, "It is amazing, 45 years after having her, I can still sing Bowie Patriots." And a lot of us say the same thing. You see all the people underneath saying, "Same here, me too, I can do that." And they talk about the 50 nifty United States, how so many of us learned the United States in order. And we can sing Alabama, Alaska, Arizona, Arkansas, California, Colorado, Connecticut, go through the whole thing, and so we can impress our friends because we know the 50 states because she taught us so well. You see that post at the bottom says, "I know every word, and the song is still taught to every student at Bowie. My kids know it, and it is sung at 5th grade graduation by all the students as the 5th graders pass by. And what about 50 Nifty United States and the Alamo song we sang every February? Still know them too. She was a great teacher. Someone else said, oh, Mrs. Archer, she had a large impact on the lives of so many kids. She made music extra fun. She was very loved. Condolences for your loss. Okay, that's personal. Absolutely love Mrs. Archer for music. Deeply sorry for your loss. She was such a wonderful music teacher. I just loved Mrs. Archer and loved her music class. And when I mentioned in this group on Facebook that she had passed, all these people were sharing thoughts and sharing memories and talking about what a special teacher she was and how much she meant to them, how much they learned. And even a couple of them said, I'm a music teacher today because of what your mother did and what she modeled for us. And those things are very special. Besides that passion for music and passion for teaching music, she had a passion for Bible class. I'm guessing from what I've picked up that she wasn't totally ready to retire from teaching when my dad talked her into it, but she took that energy and passion and took it up to church, and with a group of ladies developed what was known as Footprints of the Faithful, and as a teaching method, teaching system for teaching the Bible to elementary school students. And they had a 4-classroom rotation system where she would do the music room, there was a map room, there was a timeline room, there was a drama room, and these kids learned so much. And sometimes today I look at children's curriculum and see some children's classes, and I think, oh, those poor kids. They didn't have the opportunity to do footprints and learn in a fun way, learn in an active way. I remember when my oldest nephew Aaron, went to Oklahoma Christian and tried to test out of some classes. I remember his comment was, he kicked butt, as he said, on the Old Testament because of Footprints of the Faithful, because he had been through that, and it was just in its early stages then, but he learned so much about the Old Testament that he could easily test out of it when he got to college. Now that says something when your elementary Bible class prepares you to test out of your college classes. It was that effective, that good. And the ladies would go around and do workshops at ACU, do workshops for individual churches, and such a wonderful, wonderful program. And Mother really dedicated years of her life to that and gave herself to so many kids through that program. And the Johnson Street Church here in Johnson Street Church of Christ in San Angelo was where they were doing it, but other congregations picked it up and did it as well. The church that Caroline and I were at in Stockdale, Texas did it and had wonderful success with it, and I think so many other churches have benefited from this work. And Mother she wrote a bunch of songs for that program, but she wrote the theme song for what they were doing and actually copyrighted it. I found the copyright application for this song. Because what she did, like I say, she did it with passion. One of the other passions of her life was her family, because family meant so much to her. And the way that she took care of her mother after her father passed away, the way she took care of my dad after he got ill, and was his caretaker for so many years, even to her own detriment. But she just loved people and gave herself to them. She didn't start teaching full time until I was in school. I was the youngest of the three, and she waited until then to begin teaching full time. From talking to different cousins, I would dare say that she was considered a favorite aunt by many. And since most of my aunts and uncles aren't here today, I can say that. But she just had a way of loving people and showing people that she loved them. One really special thing in our family was Christmas. That was a time when my sisters and I would bring our families together and all be together at my mom's house. And that was something she thought about year round, made plans for year round, did little things here and there to be ready for that time. Once my dad told me that he had asked her, if you got $1 million, what would you want to do with it? And she said, I would want to take that room in our garage that we use for storage and fix it to be another bedroom to use at Christmas time. And that's because family was so important, and she couldn't think of anything she'd rather invest in than that time with family. That was my mom. That was my mom. She had a passion for family, and she had a passion for Jesus. She had a passion for the church. She never missed church just because. When we were traveling, we would find a church. I remember going on a long trip to Yellowstone National Park when I was little, and I remember her going through the yellow pages, finding a church that we could meet with, the different places we were along the way. We would plan our travels so that we would either get home in time for church or stop for church somewhere along the way for the Sunday evening service. I mean, that was just such a big part of who she was. But it wasn't just church. It wasn't just going to church. Her faith transformed her life and was really reflected in the way she treated people. She once came to Argentina when Caroline and I were living there, and she did a class for the ladies, and she based it around something that was said in the old Bambi movie by Thumper. If you remember Thumper in the Bambi movie, who says, if you can't say something nice, don't say nothing at all. And she gave a lesson based on that, but I thought that describes my mom's life. When people think of her, they think of her as sweet. They think of her as caring. They think of her as an encourager, because that's who she was. She was not going to say things to make people feel bad. She was not going to criticize. She would correct when necessary, especially children, but she always treated children with respect. I remember, being very young at night, my mom would lie in bed with me when I was going to sleep, and she'd tell me stories about Pepe the Chihuahua she would make up and different things. But I remember one night, I said, Mother, do you love God? I was about 4 or 5 years old. And she was always the kind to treat children's questions very seriously, to give serious answers as if they were coming from an adult. And she stopped and she thought and she said, yes, I do. And I said, do you love Jesus? And I probably got that from a Bible class or something, but she said, yes, I do. And the conversation didn't really go beyond that. My young mind was satisfied, but I know those weren't just answers. That was who she was. That this faith transformed her and made her into a different person. And she was a very humble person. She had so much talent in so many areas, could do so many things well, but she would never, ever push that on anyone. Never, ever make people respect her. I mean, as far as making them, saying, you've got to let me do this because I'm best. Her son has that problem. She didn't have that problem. I remember one Sunday night singing in San Angelo, and the person leading it said, "Oh, this is kind of a hard song, but we've got Irma back there. She can carry the soprano section by herself." And she was so embarrassed. And she later, I guess was a time when she criticized. She said, "I don't know why he said that. He shouldn't have said that." And yet it was true, you know. And yet my mom probably never really thought it was true, because she was a very humble person. And she was a great singer, great musician, and very smart, an excellent teacher, so many things. But she wouldn't tell you that. And Mother faced death with a quiet faith. Not so much her own death. By the time that her death came, dementia had taken her. And my mom has been gone for years, you know, in that sense. But I remember my dad in his passing. I remember the passing of her father. I remember how her mom wailed with pain. I'd never heard anyone, you know, wail like that. And my mother was much more stoic when my father passed. And some of that was her personality, but a lot of it was her faith. Now, my grandmother had great faith. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that my mother never doubted what would become of my father. And she passed that faith on to us, and gave us the ability. And, you know, people have expressed their condolences and their sorrow for us. And it's hard. You know, we've had 6 years of preparing, as, you know, she has been slowly falling into the grasp of dementia over these 6 years. The final death was rather sudden, but I never worried about her, and could confidently say to her, "This is the end of a long day and it's time to go to rest," because I believed that, because she taught me that. And I want to share a few Bible passages as I close. Thinking about Revelation chapter 1, when John sees the risen Jesus, and in verse 17 says, "When I saw him, I fell at his feet as though dead. And then he placed his right hand on me and said, 'Do not be afraid. I am the first and the last. I am the living one. I was dead, and behold, I am alive forever and ever. And I hold the keys of death and Hades.'" I love that last line. You know, Hades being not hell, but the place of the dead. And Jesus saying, "I've got the keys." And I think that as Christians, we don't have to fear death, nor where we will go after death, because Jesus has the keys. And he will come to get us. And wherever we are, he will open the door, because he's got the keys. He has the authority. And then Hebrews 2, verses 14 and 15 says, "Since the children have flesh and blood, he too shared in their humanity, so that by his death he might destroy him who holds the power of death, that is the devil, and free those who all their lives were held in slavery by their fear of death." Mother didn't teach me a fear of death. She taught me the freedom. She taught me that Jesus would be there for us. And I know that he is. And I know that her passing was a freeing act, and a chance to go and be with the Jesus that holds the keys, and the Jesus that wanted to take away the fear of death. And finally, from John 11, when Jesus is talking with Martha, whose brother has died, says, Jesus said to her, "I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me will live, even though he dies. And whoever lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this?" "Yes, Lord," she told him, "I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, who is to come into the world." When I think about my mom, I think about her saying that. I believe. I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God who was to come into the world. She wasn't afraid. We cry, we hurt, but not for her, for us. Her faith is no longer faith because now she lives the reality. Pray with me, please. Father God, thank you for my mom. Thank you for taking her peacefully. Thank you for the legacy she left behind. In the name of Jesus, amen. Thank you for letting me share these moments with you.